Welcome in, everybody, to The Dynasty. It's a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm Chris Stewart, joined by national champions A.J. McCarron and Trent Richardson. Yeah, A.J. will be on in the next block with Trent. We got a lot coming up today on the program. Don't forget, you can always follow us across social media and rate, review, please, at The Dynasty Bama, but also on the streaming platforms, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, frankly, you get your podcast, you can find us. We are indeed thedynastybama.com. This week, we're excited, chance to visit with Alabama men's basketball coach Nate Oats, the SEC tournament going on this week, but thankfully for the Tide, not until Friday, as they were the number 2 seed in the tournament, the runner-up to league champion Florida, expected to be either a 4 or perhaps even a 3 seed at the NCAA tournament next week. But we look forward to that conversation with Coach. We're going to talk spring football. And also, let's just go ahead and get this one. Let's go ahead and get this one out of the way, Trent. You got to pay attention to these social media feeds, these websites. No 3 ain't on 3. So On 3 is a really good, very reputable site that's been doing stuff for a few years now, and they really do good work. But On 3 is real. No 3 is fake. But if you don't look close, you're just, going through, as I'm afraid you were, Trent, and I know a lot of others were. You're going to find stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense, and I'm having a problem pulling it up on my phone. There we go. Here we go. On the old iPad. The tweet or the X that came out, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time getting that to pull up. But basically, it made it as if you were going after Coach Saban after he spoke with the president and made his appearance at the White House, and Trent supposedly weighed in on Nick Saban's stance against playing players, which, by the way, Coach Saban never said he's against paying players. But we'll get into that in a second. The quote, supposedly from Trent, but not really. Honestly, I don't get why he's even commenting on it. They gave me and my family $75,000 just to commit, plus $10,000 a month to stay at Alabama. Ain't none of that right. You got a lot more than that, right?
Man, listen.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
If I was to be getting that when I was in school, I would have stayed my last year in school. Like I thought it wouldn't have been a rush to go to the league. And that's with, having daughters at the time too, right? So
sure.
People don't understand why I had to rush and go to the league. I had kids. I had a family.
Responsibilities.
I had responsibility. And so, and even if, that was across the line, some type of truth, you think that would come out my mouth? Nah, it definitely wouldn't. But just to answer your question, nah, I did not say that. I woke up to that Saturday morning, and my sister actually hit me, and she in D.C., and she texted me. She was like, hey, you know what's going on? Nah, I don't know what's going on, because I actually got to sleep in. I didn't have to wake up at 5 or 4 and work out at 5, and so got to sleep in. And so they said it came out Friday, and Uncle Luke, he retweeted it. I think he retweeted it. I think Shada McCoy, he retweeted it. But nah, I've never.
Wait a minute, Uncle Luke.
Yeah, Uncle Luke. He retweeted it, and
I think not your Uncle Luke.
No, Uncle Luke.
I know. I want to clarify for the audience.
Oh, yeah.
Tell them who Uncle Luke is.
Miami Uncle Luke. Slip and slide.
Yeah.
Not slip and slide. Uncle Luke is the legend that started the Freaknik, 2 Live Crew, all of that.
That's what I thought.
That's him.
That's what I thought.
Nah,
aren't you proud of me? I got that.
Yeah. I would never. That would never come out my mouth, because it never happened, right? So at the same time, man, it's funny, man, waking up to stuff like that, man. You hear rumors and stuff like that, or somebody done put some words in your mouth that you never, said. I even had teammates calling me hey, what's this and that? And I know you ain't say nothing like that. Come on, man. Y'all know better than that. Come on. But nah, it never happened. And to me, people don't realize Coach Saban never said anything um, about kids not getting paid. I think the
Right,
structure of the transfer portal has always been a big um, slap in the face when it comes to college football for him. And I think that's what it's mostly his conversation is about, because people got to realize, too, Coach Saban is the one who came out with the panel of talking about paying kids, and came out with, he had all the coaches get together. Coach K, it was Coach Pat before she passed, Coach Kyle, all the big time college coaches was there, and they was for kids getting some type of structure of pay. And Coach Saban even came out of his mouth and said that, hey, if I can pay the kids out of my contract, I would. Like, because them kids deserve something, right?
right.
And so I don't want people to get it twisted when it comes to Coach Saban, trying to make sure that this structure of the game don't kill the game of college football. And right now, we see the game is very watered down when it comes to certain play. And, that's not to talk about anybody, but, stuff is just not like it is. Now, I would say I did like the comment that Cam made, Cam Newton, when he said, well, we're going to hold these players accountable. I think we should hold coaches accountable too, as far as staying or, spending a year or two there, with their team before they, actually can get in the transfer portal. So I definitely agree with that. So I'm not the one that's against paying players. I'm just the one that's, let's structure this right so we can start developing players with the transfer portal.
Coach was never against players making money
Nah.
off their name, image, and likeness. What he was against from the start, what he's against now, is guys getting paid to go to a school.
Yeah.
He didn't want you to be it to be part of recruiting. He didn't want you to get paid before you'd done anything. But somebody comes into a school, does it right, has a great freshman year, builds a name for themselves, creates value. And man, I'm spitting all of his talking points out, but I mean, I heard him say it so many times. Create value and be somebody that would be a legit endorser for a product, for a business. Mark Sears to me, well, I know we've talked about this before, but Mark Sears is the prime example of what NIL was supposed to be. He didn't even have a high D1 offer coming out of Muscle Shoals High School.
Hmm.
He goes to Miami of Ohio. He has a really nice start to his career, gets bigger, gets stronger, transfers to the University of Alabama, and becomes one of the most decorated players in school history. Then you start turning on television, social media, uh, all these different platforms, and he's doing endorsements. But it was in his next to last and last year before that happened because he hadn't built a name up for himself yet. But when he became the face of that basketball team that's suddenly playing in the Elite Eight or the Elite Eight and then the Final Four, that's the guy. And yeah, businesses want to attach themselves to those guys. And that's what it's supposed to be. And that's all I've ever heard Nick Saban say is that you need to do something before you earn something. Nick Saban didn't make $4 million in his first head coaching contract. He made it in his first year at the University of Alabama, and everybody laughed at that. Man, you could barely get a coordinator on Coach Saban's best staff for slight exaggeration, but they were making $1 to $2 million. So things change, the market changes. But what he never wanted to see was that to become part of the recruiting piece, other than this is what you can earn. This is not what we're going to give. That's the whole thing. Earn versus give is what
I
he was
mean,
talking
so
about.
you'll have so many questions with that too, because it's like if you get a player like Julio and there's number eights everywhere in the stadium, how
Yep.
do you compensate him for that? Or you get a player like, Johnny Football or even myself, or, that comes in that's highly recruited and now these jerseys are everywhere. Like, how do you if you're not getting paid until you after your freshman year. You're like, how do you get compensated for that? Because now y'all got my number everywhere, y'all got my face everywhere,
Right.
and as a player, and because I see it both ways, as a player and as a coach. So as a
Right.
player, like, how do you compensate this guy that's coming back home to the hood, nowhere to sleep, and until he get back to school for real. So how do you compensate that? When it comes to guys, that's why I said that argument can go on forever until they find a right system or a right way to fix it. Like it's one of those questions. It's almost like the GOAT conversation to me. Like when it comes to basketball, like
But
you can keep on giving these points and giving that point, but at
right.
the same time, it's like we never know until it's actually a structure for it. So it's not a structure for it at this moment.
No, I
That's what they're
agree.
trying to get to.
And Trent, that's fair. That's very fair. But my whole point is there's a difference in, and I said after your freshman year, but I absolutely agree with you about, all right, if they're selling those number 8 jerseys at that point and you're doing this in your freshman year, you should earn it. I agree with that. What I really was talking about was that's still the consumer buying something based on your value. That's not, hey, we're going to give you $500,000 to come to school at Alabama. If they say we're going to put your jersey out there for a chance and it's an open market and people want to buy it, that's fine. I think again, the problem that coach had and a lot of us is with guys being handed a check or put money in their account before they ever step on campus, ever get there. This is what we're going to, it shouldn't be what we do to draw you. Maybe you can say, these are your opportunities, but you can't pay them on the front end. You're just, you but again, this also goes back. The NCAA didn't do the right thing,
Yeah, that's
or
that's
people didn't do the
that's
right thing. People didn't do the right thing. So the right thing was done and in the wrong way. There's too much tied to it, or there's not any structure is the better way of putting it. All right, let's go on from that to maybe talking about some spring ball stuff. I know you and uh, AJ get into it a little bit more in our next segment, but as a player, I just would love your feedback on how exciting it is to just get going, especially when the previous year didn't end the way you wanted it to, and certainly that was the case for Alabama.
so I got a chance to be in spring twice. So once when we won it, once when we didn't win it. So the spring that we didn't win it, um well, the spring that we did win, we was outside still, right?
Mhm.
We was still in those streets, and so when we didn't win it, it was a slap in the face. It was a slap in the face to see the SEC championship game, and my head coach had to go host it, right? And
Yeah.
going back to the Natty, Auburn and Oregon played in the Natty that year, and he had to go host that game too. And so we had to get the earful when Coach came back about how embarrassing that was, and we felt for him. Like for me, it was a slap in the face to hear my coach getting booed, like and to see him having to host that game and knowing that we was one play away or we should have been in this game, and all we had to do was not go out or not or pay attention or just do what we're supposed to be coached to do. So that next year, the spring that we didn't win, like I took it upon myself, and everything was going to be um, top notch. Everything was going to be elite. Every practice was going to be led to everybody got to match my intensity. And so I practiced hard. I made sure if I was practicing hard, they knew they were going to have to practice hard too. And so sometimes you got to find those, 2 to 3 guys, two or three, 4 guys. I think me and AJ said something about this in the episode too. I don't know if it was the last week we said, you got to find those guys that, that can command the room, and, they have developed the respect that, guys really, seeing you go through the process and buy into. And at this time, my last year in school, like I played with some of the greats. I played with Mark Ingram, and I had to be in a room with Rob Church and Terry Grant. Those guys were, household names at the time. And Eddie Lacy was right there beside me. So, I got to, see the ropes with all that. And, I was on the field as a freshman. So when it was my time to speak and to go show up, I had to make sure I put in the right work. So everybody know when I'm out there working and y'all out there working, it got to be the same intensity. And if I'm slacking, and then, you got to have that person that, if I'm slacking, which was Courtney Upshaw or Mark Barron or Dante Hightower on the other side of the field, they would come to me and, hey, let's pick it up. You gotta have those type of guys.
Right.
And so if everybody mindset is not the same, I'm telling you, it's hard to get back to that championship game. It's hard to get back to them playoffs because I'm telling you, that mindset in the spring is where you start really winning the national championship.
So we got more college football talk, more spring ball talk coming up in the last segment of our show. AJ McCarron joining Trent to discuss that. But when we come back, we're turning our attention to the hardwood. The SEC tournament is this week, followed by the NCAA. Alabama, a 2 seed in Nashville, possibly as high as a 3 seed when they roll into the big dance. We'll talk about that with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nate Oats, when we come back on The Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's not uncommon for me to be on this podcast with two tremendous college football players, and with AJ out, we had to go to the I think the D3 ranks to get one, but we did fill the void as we welcome in the head coach, yes, of the Alabama Crimson Tide men's basketball team, but if I'm not mistaken, former wideout at Maranatha Baptist University.
Listen, when you're on a podcast with Trent Richardson, you're probably not talking about your football career. So we probably don't need to talk about my football playing career on this podcast.
I will do this, though. I am going to ask not specifics on the career. We won't bring up your accolades, and I won't bring up that I was the Fairfield Pee Wee Tigers 85-pound player of the week for my effort at middle linebacker in a 49-0 loss. Okay, we won't bring that up. We'll keep it to basketball. But I do want to know, from a competitiveness standpoint and understanding and building toughness like you do with your teams, how much did the football background help?
Look, most kids today's day and age, by the time they're old enough to be competitive in anything, pick one sport. When I grew up, man, I played football, basketball, baseball. I quit baseball after my freshman year. The pitches came way too fast. I couldn't, but I was into everything. Like the fact that you got to put the pads on, get hit, go through some adversity. Like I've been hit. Shoot, it was only Division III, but I did play college football. As a receiver, you get hit a little bit. So the to me, football breeds a lot of toughness, and some of it you can't. It's very hard to replicate in basketball. So
Right.
I'm all for some kid. Now there ain't very many left out there, but I'm all for some kids that have played some football, at least up till a certain age at least. So I think there's a lot of toughness that comes with it.
Well, Coach, we know they don't make them like they used to. So, that's something Coach Saban always tell us. They don't make them like they used to. So, Coach, tell me this. As a receiver, what type of receiver were you? You was going to go across the middle? You going to beat them with
Wes
speed?
Welker, right? Like Wes Welker.
Gotcha.
No, listen.
Gotcha.
The one year I led our team in yards per catch, and I just happened to get a few long ones, like, 50, 60 yarder to inflate. I had some outliers. I'm a math guy. I had a few outliers that stretched the yards per catch out quite a bit. But no, I was a little bit more. I just never dropped a ball. I wasn't like the fastest guy. I remember he was talking about the gloves before we went live. I had the Newmans in college, so I had a pair of receiving gloves my freshman year in high school, and they weren't the good Newmans. They were like, and it was cold up in Wisconsin. So, you get to late, you're playing in the snow. You got to have the gloves, man. I dropped a touchdown pass my freshman year. Like we didn't have JV. You were on the varsity your freshman year, and it was big game. Man, my best friend's dad was the head coach. Man, I thought he was going to kill me. Like, "Hey, get the OT, get those gloves off." Like, I couldn't get those gloves off fast enough. Like, I think that was the last ball I dropped. I didn't drop any balls after that. After my freshman year of high school, we looked those things in and we caught all of them from then on.
So, Maranatha Baptist, high school coach, high school head coach, um, assistant at Buffalo, head coach at Buffalo, great run there. You wind up at the University of Alabama, and you come in at Alabama as the head basketball coach, but at a time that football is in the midst of one of the greatest runs in the history of the sport. And now you've got basketball, and I say this all the time with the utmost respect to C.M. Newton and his 3 straight SEC titles and Wimp Sanderson and all the success that he had and Bart Gottfried, the first Elite Eight, SEC title and all that. These are the glory days for Alabama basketball. You've taken the Tide to 2 Elite Eights, a Final Four, 2 tournaments, 2 regular season titles, and a second place finish when you were spending all year long trying to figure out what in the heck your roster was going to be like. How special to have this program where you have it, and yet I know you well enough to know that you're still hungry for more.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I came here, I've said it before, like you said, like, Saban had this thing rolling. Obviously, Trent helped him get it rolling. I mean, they won 6 national championships here with Saban. I have an Excel sheet, when I was a high school coach with to make my practice plans every day, and I had at the bottom, I had quotes. I'd go in and find a good quote. We had a quote of the day, and I had to start a separate tab in the Excel sheet that beside the quotes one that said Saban quotes because he had so many elite quotes that I tried to use. Shoot, I used at Buffalo, and I came here. I'm like, man, I probably got to stop using Saban quotes as often as I do because I'm actually here. These basketball players may get tired of hearing about Saban all the time, but I had the most respect for Saban ever. So we were just trying to get basketball up to competitive to compete for SC championships, like to be in the mix. Like, we've still yet to win a national championship here. We still are not to the level that football is, and we're still trying to get there. But this place expects winning if they're gonna have the sport. They expect you to compete. I think 6 different sports won a national championship here. Football obviously has won the most. So I feel like we've got basketball up to where it belongs within the athletic department. It's not up to where football is yet, but we're working. We had a long ways to go when we got here, and we're trying to get there. So it's a lot closer than it was when we got here, but it's still not where it needs to be.
Trent,
Well,
go ahead,
coach,
buddy.
yeah, coach, you got I've been looking at that defense lately. Man, I was a defensive guy when I played basketball. Of course, I was the shortest man on the court, but defense was stellar.
All the football guys were defensive specialists on the
Yeah,
basketball
man, I,
floor.
I
Yeah.
had some I had some
Lock
hops
guys
too.
up, get physical, yeah.
Yeah, yes, sir. And tell me is how have the defense identity evolved, and how can you keep it going? What it's going to take to keep it going, in the play and going into March Madness.
Yeah, well, so you've been following apparently a little bit. Our defense needs to get better. I mean, we've had a top 5 offense every year for the last 3 years. We're leading the country in scoring again, I think. So we've had a top 3 defense in the country efficiency wise 2 years I've been here. Dude, this is not one of them. Like we need to get better to make a run. We're getting better, like you said. To me, a lot of it comes down to how tough, physical, how into the ball our guards want to get. So I'm guessing you were pretty tough, physical, could get into the ball and move your feet pretty well and blow up a lot of pick and rolls, handoffs.
Yes,
If you
sir.
saw my teams at Buffalo play, those guards looked a lot more like you than maybe some of the guards I have here. I think more of them played football in high school. They were tough, physical. They were pretty skilled on offense, but they had a defensive identity. We've got some super talented, ultra talented scorers, and they're getting better on defense. But we need them to continue to make a jump, like just the physicality, the ball pressure, blowing plays up. Like we had, the beginning of the Auburn game, we had 2 turnovers that led the other way. That got us out to a great start. Here, our last game, I thought we did it against Georgia. We just turned it over too much ourselves. So it's been coming here the last few weeks. It needs to continue to come now.
Here you are, into the regular season. You go through this gauntlet of a non-conference schedule and then the gauntlet of the SEC. Um, if Florida had not been just absolutely elite, you get no worse than a share of the league title this year. I say it with the utmost respect because they were as good the back half as anybody I've seen in almost 25 years of doing this at Bama. Um, but now, how do you take it to a different gear now that you go to the postseason? And I would think, Coach, that may be a little bit easier opportunity to do, given that you finally got the roster together. I mean, I know there's a couple of guys that you obviously weren't going to have, but you finally been able to go numerous games with the same personnel, and it's not constantly having to shuffle it around and try to figure out who you've got from game to game.
Yeah, no, it's kind of nice to not have to have a different starting. I think we've had different starting lineups this year than we've ever had since I've been here. Most of it forced on by injury. So it is nice to get a little more consistent group, but some of them are still trying to get in shape from when they were out. It's not like we're healthy, but we're not everybody at 100% yet, if that makes sense. So
It does.
hopefully we get there to shoot seasons. I mean, we play the SEC tournament this week, NCAA tournament next week, and if we don't do what you're supposed to, your season's over. So, we're down here to the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever we end up with, however long we can turn it. So, it's good to get the continuity, the chemistry, the ability to play different lineups, the depth. That the front court got decimated a little bit with different injuries, season-ending ones on some of the kids, but we still have pretty good depths compared to some. We're playing 9, 10 guys depending game to game, and we've gotten healthier. So, I just watched the Texas game because we're going to play the winner of, Texas Ole Miss plays tomorrow night, and then that winner plays Georgia. So, unless there's some upsets, it'll either be Texas or Georgia. So I watched our Texas game. That was the third game of the SEC. Man, Taylor was great that game. You go back and watch that game. Taylor
Yeah.
Bourboin was
Yeah.
really good. Well, he had a slew of injuries, got out of shape through the course. Sometimes you get lower body injuries. It's hard to keep the guy in shape. I mean, you can try to do the bike, but it's different. So, he's coming back around. I thought he had a really good practice. Man, if we can get him back looking like he did against Texas and get everybody else playing at their peak level, we got a chance to be pretty good and make a run here.
Go ahead, Trent.
One of my questions, Coach, and I guess you kind of answered it. Like, what is your challenges at the end of the year going into the postseason, and going into the SEC championship or SEC tournament, then March Madness. Like, what is your biggest challenges, and how can you utilize your bench even more going into the
Yeah,
SEC tournament?
some of the champs sure not that much different than football. It's like staying sharp while managing minor injuries, if you will.
Mm,
Nobody's really 100% come March in college basketball. I mean, you've been banged up to a long season.
yeah,
I'm guessing football was similar. You did have the big off time before you get to bowl season. Back now, it's before you get to the playoffs or whatever. So you could try to get some guys rested. But if you just rested everybody, now all of a sudden you lose your edge and you get out of shape. And what do we do in practice to stay on top of our conditioning? What do we do in practice to make sure everybody's sharp? We play fast. We try to run teams out of the gym. Well, you don't just come in and say you got to play. You got to practice playing fast. You got to get your skill level up playing fast. You got to have game speed drills. So, how many of them do you do while nursing some guys' injuries, while staying sharp, while making sure you don't get an injury in practice? To me, that's the biggest thing. And so we pulled some practice plans up from when, we won the SEC tournament twice since we've been here. Last time we won it, the Brandon Miller at Clowney that year. Man, we we got after it on
especially,
Monday
yeah, yeah.
that year. We it was no holds barred practice when I looked at that plan. We pulled those up. I'm like, it probably isn't the year with all the nagging little injuries we've had, but we lost. We were 16-1 and lost at A&M in the last regular season game that year. So gives you a chance to get after them a little bit. They give you a good reason to come in on edge a little bit as a coach. So we did lose the Georgia game sometimes. We were 8 in a row, I think. So we won 9 out of the last 10. Sometimes you got to create a little edge. Sometimes a
Yeah.
loss helps you create a little. I'm sure Saban created a little edge occasionally. I think I saw it a few times. Sometimes I think may have been after wins too. Not they just didn't win enough. Yeah, I think that was the maddest I've ever seen Saban around here. Like would be when you weren't executing when you were up 30 or 40, and he felt you should be up like 50. I felt like that to me is like when he got the most on edge, if you will, and try to push the buttons, if you will.
Well, I don't know if you was watching it this time. Our co-host AJ got smacked on his butt for throwing a long pass to Julio. We was up 30-some points.
He didn't
threw
make
it
the
over
right
top,
read.
and I knew he was gonna go for it. I was like, oh, he going for it. He going for it. Oh my gosh, he went for it, and he got back to that bench, and Coach Saban let him have it.
It was an all-timer. Hey, Coach, you're generous with your time. Thanks so much for being on with us, and good luck not only in Nashville but beyond as well.
Appreciate you guys having me on. Great
Yes,
talking
sir.
to you.
Appreciate you,
Roll
Coach.
Tide.
Thanks again to Coach Oats for joining us here on the Dynasty. We come back in our final segment. Our producer, Steve Gorgie, will be talking again with Trent and with AJ McCarron, checking in to discuss a little more about spring football at the Capstone. That's all right here on the Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Welcome back to the Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. We have AJ McCarron over there. We got Trent Richardson over here. I'm Steve Gorgie sitting in for Chris Stewart, and we got the quarterback with us. So let's talk quarterbacks as we get back into spring ball. Spring ball underway in Tuscaloosa, and anytime you have a quarterback battle, that is going to be the top story. AJ, we have Austin Mack, redshirt junior, who has been with Kalen DeBoer for now. This will be his 4th season with DeBoer, started his career at Washington, transferred with him to Alabama. Then you have Keelon Russell, highly touted redshirt freshman out of Duncanville, Texas, won a couple state championships down there, was the 2nd-ranked player nationally in the class of 2025, only behind Michigan quarterback Bryce Underwood. So you have two guys who haven't seen a lot of action, but have a lot of talent. When you look at these two quarterbacks, Mack and Russell, what do you see from these guys? What do they bring to the table?
Well, I mean, you said it, talent. I mean, the arm talent's there. It's kind of like I'm teaching my guys here is you can have all the talent in the world. You can be able to sling it 80 and, throw it through a car wash and not get wet. But if I can't tell when the car wash is on or off, then I can't read coverages. It really doesn't make a difference. So, I mean, you won't really know what you have until you get into practice, and then the coaching staff, really starts to see. Spring is usually the learning phase. So from a standpoint on defenses you're seeing and everything, it really not as ramped up as it is going into actual camp or getting into the regular season. But I mean, it's a ton of talent. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out, just from a sense of, I mean, you mentioned it with Austin Mack. Does him being in that offense for 4 years, does it allow himself to separate more? I don't know if there is, because I feel like he had been in that offense for 3 years, and if there was a huge separation in understanding the offense and knowing exactly, like, he probably would have started last year. But at the same time, you never know. And kids, grow mentally each and every year. They become better. The longer they've been in the system, they know the ins and outs. So it's going to be an interesting battle, and something I think not only myself, but every Alabama fan and former players, excited to watch.
Trent, AJ mentioned it, spring, it's a little bit more about learning than necessarily separating yourself from the other guy. But as a guy on the offense, how quickly do you know who the guy that gives you the best chance to win is?
Man, it's crazy because I've been around a quarterback battle a couple times in my college career and kind of seen, who came out on top, at least one of them that should have been playing a little earlier than we thought. But it comes towards when you got the quarterback that can control the team, and is very smart and he can handle the lesson within the loss. Um, I think when you have that much established, as a guy that's never had to compete as a quarterback, but a guy that's looking in on the outside of that quarterback battle, it's one of those things that, man, you want to be secure, especially you going into the spring and you got a guy that that's been there for going through the offense for 4 years, and then you got a kid that's amazingly talented, and both of these kids are really talented. Especially with Keelon, man, everything he can do with his legs and his quick release. But Mack, he's so tall, can see over the line, and for him to be that big, he also got a little wiggle room with him too. When having to use his legs when he got to. So, just being able to be comfortable with the guy that's going to lead that team for the whole year. I think it's something that you got to have early. But I think when you get a situation like this, it brings out the best of each other. You make diamonds in situations like this because you got a guy that can throw it a mile, but when you don't understand the lesson, within your throw, or you don't understand, exactly where everybody got to be at, or you just can't hit the target. I think Coach said it best last year. Ty, he threw the best catchable ball. And so when you hear stuff like that and you see stuff like this, as a running back, man, I want the guy that's there that's going to throw the best comfortable ball, coachable ball and catchable ball, for our team to be successful.
AJ, when you think about a Kalen DeBoer quarterback, Michael Penix is the guy that jumps out. He had a ton of success with him at Washington, leading them to a national championship game. He was there with him at Indiana, too, when he was the offensive coordinator. But I think it's worth noting that whoever wins this battle this year, this will be the first Kalen DeBoer starting quarterback at Alabama who he recruited. Now, I don't know that that necessarily matters, but I think it's worth noting. When you think about these two guys, do either of them jump out to you and you think, like, this is a Kalen DeBoer quarterback? This is a Kalen DeBoer quarterback where Ty Simpson was a Nick Saban quarterback.
Oh, I mean, hell, I think both of them are probably Kalen DeBoer quarterbacks, to be honest with you. I mean, just because, like you said, he recruited both of them. And again, the interesting thing, and Trent mentioned it a little bit right there, was the other thing I look for in this situation is what quarterback can separate from going out each and every day in practice and not feeling like he's competing against the other guy and he's competing more against himself. Because if he has the confidence and he believes in his abilities to be successful, then he doesn't need to worry about the other guy he's going against. You just worry about yourself. And, and that was one of the things that I dealt with during my time, going into my first year of being the starter, is I had to not worry about what Phillip did in practice, and he was going to make throws. That's his job. It was, okay, am I making sure I'm putting us in the best situation or the best scenario to be successful as an offense and as a team? And if I do that and knowing the type of player I am, then I'll win the job. And I think that's what came down to it. And then also, there's some deals where coaches get caught up in believing everything they see in practice. And I think there's a lot of guys also in college and at every level, but usually it happens more in college because they're coming from just high school and not playing in big crowds. But when those bright lights turn on, it's different than practice, right? Some guys are hell of practice players. Like, they do unbelievable stuff in practice, and when it comes to the game, they just do not perform. And so you also got to kind of find that guy that when the lights are bright, can he go out and perform to the best of his ability? And this is that time to kind of see as much of that as you possibly can. Put them in tough situations. Put them in 2 minutes during the springtime to where, like tomorrow, we have a 2-minute situation. We're on the minus 45. We got 50 seconds, no timeouts. Can you get us down there and score a touchdown? Right. So put them in tough situations, see how they handle those things. And then you kind of gather all the information up and make a decision from there.
Now, Trent, things are a little bit different this spring because there is technically no spring transfer portal window. Now, I realize there are some ways that players could potentially get around that if they want to just simply unenroll from the school, enroll somewhere else. There's some potential penalties that could come down if another program is found to be tampering in that regard. But technically, by the letter of the law, there is no spring transfer portal window, which makes things a little bit different this season. It means that if somebody loses a job in the spring, like we saw a lot in the past, if you lose a job in the spring, you're going to go find somewhere that you can play right away, that you're going to get the starting job. You're a coach. You guys are both coaches. Does that change for you at all how you would approach a spring ball situation, knowing that it's not quite as easy to leave?
It's crazy. We got to talk about this. Like it's almost like we holding kids, or it's almost like a prison sentence at some time when you talk about this stuff, right? But no, I think, man, guys are going to be, the good guys are going to want to be coached. The guys that want to be there, the guys that want to prove that they're the best, they're gonna want to be coached the right way. I think we do a disservice with these kids because we're not able to coach these guys like we want to, and getting these guys tail and let some of these guys know, like, hey, bro, you need this type of coaching. And so I think for me, it wouldn't change up the way I coach. Um, because at the end of the day, man, if you want the real, this is where you're gonna come to. If not, you can go elsewhere and they can, they can tell you, about the peaches and the creams and the strawberries and the bananas. They can tell you all that stuff. But when it come down to the real meat of the conversation, like, are you taking what I'm coaching you, what I'm saying to you, not how I'm saying it, but how I'm coaching you. So it's, to me, it's a toss up, man, because it's a new day and age, man. So I wouldn't change the way I coach or the way I approach the game. I guess that's a question more for AJ when it comes to, keeping guys and retaining your roster, with the spring, because technically it's not a transfer portal, but at the same time, you can just withdraw and do all the other stuff too. So, I mean, it's ways around it, but at the same time, like, for me, it's hard to say because this game has took a total 360 of far as mental toughness when it comes to getting these kids the right service that they need and doing it the right way.
AJ, on the flip side of that too, it's not as easy as it was last year to look around and say, hey, I don't really like what I'm seeing at this position group. We need to go hit the portal and go grab somebody. How does that impact the way you might approach the spring?
Well, I think it's better from a sense of, all right, now coaches have to develop players, and it's not about just taking the easy road on everything. So now, I mean, it'll really showcase if your staff is able to develop guys or you just recruiters. So, it was different during our time because, like Cochran used to always say, hey, we got Ferraris and Lambos in here as athletes. We're just going to give it a tune up and put some spinners on it and roll, right? Like that's like the famous quote from him. So it's like now I think this whole thing has, the way the portal and college football has been for the last couple of years, has really this trickle down effect all the way to high school, because high school kids aren't getting recruited as much and everybody was leaning on the portal. And so there's a little bit of gray area in it to where not all kids that are in high school have the best coaching either, and they're not getting developed the way they're supposed to. And so now, you're able to have more time with these guys and develop them and teach them the schemes and the process that you do things. and the way you're supposed to do it to be successful, and then not only to be successful but sustain the success that you have. And I think it's better for college football and better for coaches, the fact that now they can focus more on, okay, now we have to get back to coaching, and it's not just this, like like Trent said, is peaches and cream. So where you're kind of, you know, um, giving everybody a BS runaround and telling them how great they are, and you got to be best friends with them. Now it gets back to the old school way of you got to coach.
Well, AJ, Kalen DeBoer and his staff, they're trying to get their team ready for a season that starts in September. You're trying to get your team, the Birmingham Stallions, ready for a season that starts in less than 3 weeks. We haven't talked to you since players reported to camp. Where's your focus at right now with this team, with kickoff just a couple weeks away against Louisville?
Yeah, I tell you, I've been truly blessed with this team from a sense of, and at the pro level, you always run the risk of having a bad apple um, in your locker room that kind of ruins it for everybody and can, be a cancer to the team. Dude, we don't have one of those guys. Like, and if we do, it hasn't shown its head right now, and we're 3 weeks into camp. I mean, it is unbelievable. Like I feel like myself and my staff do a really good job of taking care of the guys. I think our guys would say that from a sense of understanding when we need to pull back on reps, understanding when they need a day off, like having a good feel for that. And it helps the fact that recently just a player in this deal and understanding the league and the timing and everything and how this whole league works. But um, I mean, the guys have been really busting their ass. It's been awesome to be a part of. Um, and I'm just super excited. Our guys are getting better each and every day. They understand how to practice the right way. They understand communication. They're flying around. They're practicing like pros, taking care of each other. But they also go out and compete each and every day, and it's been fun to be a part of and watch. And the biggest thing I try to tell them in this league, which makes it different, it's as close to the NFL as you can possibly get. This league is built off of everybody. It's kind of football in general now. Everybody's out for themselves. One thing I'm trying to tell to these guys and remind them each and every day is, if you can, because you have such a short time with each other and you only get a month of training camp, the team that can grow together and become a family and a complete unit are the teams that are going to be successful. The teams that are out just looking for individual success are going to be the teams that have no success. And I think everybody's put their ego to the side, left it at the door, and really focused and bought in on the team mindset and aspect of things. And it's been awesome to see, and I'm excited for them.
I get you guys out of here with this, and it's a question for both of you because AJ, you played in this league. You're now coaching in the league. Trent, you didn't play in this league, but you played in similar leagues. With such a condensed time frame to build that culture, build that identity, it's so important in the game of football. Any football coach you talk to at any level is going to tell you culture and identity are critical. How do you accelerate just building that in such a short time frame? Trent, what has your experience been as a player in leagues like this?
So I was one of the guys that was kind of like the face of the AFF, and you go get your guys that can lead a team, and they kind of be appointed to you when you first get there. I don't know if AJ had his guys, and I mean AJ got to play in the league 2 or 3 years, and so he understand like guys that's still there that he played against, or guys he done heard about through the grapevine, and so you have them 2 to 3, sometimes 4. You had those guys, and that can lead, on offense and defense and sometimes special team. But you have those guys that's, hammering the message to these guys too. And that's understanding like, okay, I get what coach saying, this is how you translate it to the players and, not pissing the players off. And sometimes you have to get underneath the players' tail, man. I can remember one time, man, we had a problem with guys could not remember the snap. And so as grown men, as people's getting paid to play this, game as a child game has been given to us, as an offensive unit, we shouldn't jump off sides. And so I had to point it out, and we had one guy saying that he couldn't hear this and that. I said, well, hey, bro, you're a pro. You need to approach that to your quarterback or your center, whoever it is. We need to be all on one page. We're getting paid too much money for it. And you got to have that type of guy that, to light the fire underneath the team sometime. And so, in having that, you have a group to where now the expectations for you is the same for me. And we all here for one reason. Let's get to the next level. Let's win this thing. And let's put, a stamp on our career where we wanted to go.
AJ, how about for you?
100%. I agree with everything Trent said. And then I think from a coaching side of things, it's from the get-go, we set the standard. This is what the standard's going to be. If you practice this way, you fly around, you practice the way champions practice, you understand and buy into the standard of excellence that we want, then we take care of you. And if we feel like we're lacking, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to have a tough practice. But I haven't had one of those days. I think everybody has literally bought into our standard, and this is what we expect. These are the expectations. And the biggest thing, and it's a Saban saying from a sense and mindset, but it's everybody in this world, no matter what field we're in now as humans, everybody wants the overnight success, right? All they think about is the results. How can I get rich overnight? Or how can I become famous overnight? Like nobody wants to focus on the process it takes each and every day to achieve that. And I think that's the biggest thing for us is, this is the standard, this is the expectations. And then you go out to be process oriented instead of result oriented. And if we do what we're supposed to do and we practice the way we're supposed to practice and we play the way we're supposed to, no, we're not worried about the opponent. It's faceless. We worry about the shit we can control. We're going to be successful. And if we win as a team, everybody else is going to be successful off of that. We're going to have guys signed to NFL teams, get NFL contracts, and not just be a practice squad guy, make the actual roster, because they understand teams in the NFL want to sign guys that understand and know how to be successful, and they know how to be a team player, and they want to see a receiver over here not just jog off the ball when he's not getting it. They want to see him go in and do a push to crack block and be able to spring the running back for 80, right? Like It's the little things. And if everybody can buy into that and we're successful as a team, I'm telling these guys, these NFL teams will come sign you and give you a chance because you were on a successful team. It's the same way, why Alabama had, when we were there, so many guys drafted more than any other school each and every year, it seemed like. But it was because NFL GMs, owners, head coaches, they wanted guys that knew how to work and what it took, the amount of work you had to put in to be successful and then sustain that success. So I think everything Trent said, and then my thoughts are, what you do.
No matter what it is, sports, business, life, team success leads to individual success. No doubt about it. I think well said, AJ. Guys, that's the show for today. It was fun. Appreciate you letting me hang out with you. This has been The Dynasty, a podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Remember, new episodes of the show drop each week. YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. If you're looking for the show, just go to thedynastybama.com and you can find it there. And wherever you're listening, please rate, review, and be sure to check us out across social media, wherever you consume your social media, at The Dynasty Bama. For AJ, for Trent, I'm Steve saying so long and roll tide, everybody.